The void of space stretched before Captain Elias Thorn like an endless black canvas, speckled with distant suns that flickered like dying embers. His eyes, sharp and unyielding, traced the course of the Resolute as it drifted into the Orion Expanse, a region of galactic space that bore the scars of ancient conflicts and the quiet promise of unknown dangers. Silence pressed against the hull, thick and unbroken, and yet somewhere deep in the distance, an unshakable roar waited. Elias's fingers drummed against the console, a nervous rhythm he could never quite suppress. For a lifetime he had stared into the abyss, and for a lifetime he had refused to blink. But this was different. Intelligence reports streamed in with cold surgical efficiency. An alien armada, numbering in the hundreds of dreadnoughts, was sweeping through the sector. Worlds were burning, civilizations were vanishing. Not one had survived. The transmissions from fleeing colonies were fragments of panic. Families vaporized mid-evacuation, cities reduced to glittering ash, orbital stations obliterated without so much as a warning. And yet, here was the Resolute, alone and unarmed with anything close to parity. "Captain," Lieutenant Mara Jin's voice cut through the tense hum of the bridge. Her tone was clipped, military, yet it carried a tremor he could sense only because he knew her well. "Recon confirms their formation. They move like a single organism, efficient, unstoppable." Elias's jaw tightened. "I've heard the reports. Tell me something new." Her eyes flicked to him, a brief shadow passing across her expression. "They're calling this advance the nulltide. Entire star systems vanish. Nothing survives." He let the weight of that sink in. Not nothing can stop them, but nothing survives them. Humans had faced threats before, of course. Pirates, rogue AI, marauder fleets. But these were not obstacles. They were inevitabilities. And yet somewhere deep in his chest a stubborn ember glowed. The Resolute was old. Its weapon systems were relics, its shields fragile against modern bombardment. But the crew, those men and women who had sworn their lives to him, were not relics. And Elias had a plan, born not of technology but of human stubbornness. "Prepare the fleet logs," he said, though there was no fleet, only his single ship and its handful of brave souls. "I want full schematics. I want trajectories. I want to know exactly how they'll approach and exactly how we can make them pay for every inch of space they claim." Mara's brow arched. "You want to fight them, sir?" He met her gaze steadily. "No, I want to survive." "But survival sometimes demands more than caution. It demands defiance." The bridge fell silent. Each crew member absorbed the impossible odds with the kind of grim acceptance that only humans, terrified, yet audacious, could muster. Elias moved forward, standing before the panoramic viewport that framed the abyss. He traced the faint gleam of distant stars, imagining them not as lights but as witnesses. Perhaps the universe was vast and indifferent, but there was something else there too, something that whispered in quiet, inexplicable ways. That subtle presence he had felt before in the darkest voids, in moments when survival seemed impossible. A childlike faith, some might call it, but to him, it was simply acknowledgement that even in the coldest reaches of space, order and meaning could exist, waiting to reward courage. "Sir," Mara spoke again, quieter this time. "Sensors are picking up anomalies. Energy spikes, movement." Elias leaned closer. "Details. Not natural," she said. They pulse like they're aware we're here." The Resolute's engines hummed, low and steady, like the heartbeat of a creature unaware of its own legend, yet about to become one. And in that heartbeat, Elias sensed the tension of history itself, the silent whisper that one small act of defiance could ripple across the stars. "Signal the high command," Elias instructed, almost mechanically. "Tell them the humans are unyielding. Tell them there is still a spark in the void. Even if it's only one ship." Mara hesitated. "Sir, they won't answer. Every system is gone. They can't." "Then they'll hear it anyway," Elias replied, voice low and certain. "From us, from the Resolute, from those who refuse to kneel." He turned to his crew, moving along the bridge like a conductor directing a symphony of unrelenting determination. "We do not have the firepower to win by strength. We do not have numbers. But we have something they do not understand. We have ingenuity, instinct, and the willingness to endure what they cannot imagine. That is our weapon. That is the edge they will never see coming." The crew, A mixture of hardened veterans and raw recruits straightened. Each absorbed the weight of his words, letting them ignite something primitive and essential: the fierce human refusal to surrender. In the empty vastness beyond the Resolute's hull, the armada appeared. Not like ships exactly, more like a tide of black mirrors reflecting each other endlessly, moving with a horrifying precision. They crushed worlds effortlessly, obliterating everything in their path. Yet here was the Resolute, a single vessel daring to defy the inevitable. Elias's mind raced, calculating, scheming, imagining every possible outcome. The old war manuals, the forgotten tactics from 1,000 centuries, the creative leaps humans had taken when cornered, he considered them all. Each scenario, each impossible gambit felt alive in his mind, and then he smiled, faint and wry as the weight of the impossible pressed against his ribs. "They think we're nothing," he muttered to himself. "They'll learn. Humans are never nothing." The first pulse of alien fire streaked across the void. Not at the Resolute yet. A warning shot. A ripple of energy that shimmered like liquid night. The bridge lights flickered and the ship's hull vibrated with a subtle hum. Every sensor, every gauge, every crew member froze for the briefest moment, just long enough for fear to press against them like a physical force. And then Elias spoke. Softly but with unshakable resolve. "Raise shields. Initiate evasive vectors, but keep your eyes on the stars. Keep your hearts in this fight. We are humans. We endure. We create. We stand." A sudden silence followed, more profound than any before. Even the void seemed to pause. Somewhere beyond the shimmer of alien craft, something flickered. A sensation of order almost divine settling over the moment. Mara glanced at him, eyes wide. "Sir, how are we going to do this?" Elias's gaze never left the abyss. By being human. The warning pulse of the armada continued, a dark heartbeat in the infinite night. The Resolute responded, engines flaring, shields humming, crew tense yet unbroken. In the darkness, a single truth hung like a star refusing to die. This battle would not be won with technology alone. It would be won with will. And somewhere beyond the void, beyond the cold calculations of alien war machines, the universe held its breath, because the humans were ready, and the armada had yet to learn that the Terrans did not simply survive. They endured. They resisted. They struck back. The first shot would be fired not at the alien fleet, but at destiny itself. And somewhere deep in the black, the stars seemed to shimmer with something almost like expectation. The void didn't scream. It whispered. Yet when the first pulse of alien energy struck, it felt like the entire expanse had drawn a breath and let it go in a shattering roar. The Resolute shuddered violently, her hull groaning as if the ship itself had recognized the enormity of the challenge. Sparks leapt from consoles. Crew members gripped rails and straps, knuckles white against the tension that pressed against them like an invisible hand. "Shields holding at 60%, Mara Jin reported, her voice calm but taut with adrenaline. "They're probing us, testing our defenses." Elias didn't reply immediately. He stood rigid, eyes fixed on the array of black shapes advancing in perfect formation, each ship an angular predator gleaming in the faint starlight. The armada's movement was hypnotic, terrifying, and yet predictable. Patterns emerged if one looked closely. Predictability was a human gift. Observation and ingenuity had saved species from extinction before, and Elias intended to use it now. "Adjust vectors," he ordered finally, voice low and precise. "We'll weave through their formation, make them think we're weak, make them think we're trapped. We're not." The crew responded instantly, trained hands dancing over panels, adjusting thrusters, rerouting power, each motion a heartbeat in the ship's tense rhythm. Elias's mind moved faster than the consoles could register. Angles of approach, gravimetric fields, energy signatures, reaction times of the alien craft, every detail catalogued in a mental map. "Incoming fire," the tactical officer warned. A streak of violet energy arced toward the Resolute, its brilliance blinding even through the viewports. Elias leaned forward, feeling the heat of anticipation press against his spine. He wasn't afraid. Fear had no place here. Fear was acknowledgement. Courage was action. The first volley hit. The Resolute quaked, alarms blaring. Hull plating warped, windows fractured, and the bridge lights flickered in a staccato rhythm. Crew members clung to consoles as a wave of energy rippled through the ship. Yet they endured. Elias's mind raced. If they could predict the next pulses, they could survive. And if they survived long enough, they could strike back. Divert auxiliary power to shields, full spectrum, he commanded, and keep the engines at maximum evasive potential. We're threading a needle through death itself. Mara nodded, fingers flying over the controls. We're reading minor fluctuations in the Armada's formation. They're reacting to us. Every movement we make is being tracked. Good, Elias muttered. Then we make them track ghosts. The Resolute twisted and pivoted through space, engines roaring as if the vessel had become alive. Aliens might have had superior firepower, but humans had adaptability. They had unpredictability. They had courage forged in millennia of hardship. Aboard the bridge, silence settled for the briefest moment. Not peace, but anticipation. And then a new sound erupted. A signal, crackling and distorted, pulsing through the communications array. Captain, Mara said, uncertainty in her tone. It's them. They're speaking. Elias raised an eyebrow. Then let's listen. The alien voice was not melodic, not human, but sharp, vibrating with authority and menace. The bridge speakers reverberated with its cadence. You are insignificant. Yield or be erased. Your world is already lost. Resistance is futile. The words were designed to instill fear, to crush morale. Most species would have faltered, would have surrendered at this point. But the humans on the Resolute, they simply listened and prepared. Elias leaned forward, gripping the edge of his console. Tell them, he said quietly, a dangerous smile tugging at his lips, that the Terrans refuse to die quietly. Mara hesitated. Sir, you want me to reply? Yes, he said, calm and certain. Reply, but not with words. Reply with action. The Resolute surged forward, engines flaring as if the ship itself were answering the challenge. The alien fleet, colossal and confident, was forced to adjust. Their energy pulses missed by meters, then by kilometers. Minor errors, insignificant individually, but multiplied across the vast fleet, they became cracks in the impossible wall. Elias's crew worked in perfect harmony, human ingenuity at its peak. Engineers rerouted power in ways considered reckless, pilots executed maneuvers thought suicidal, and the tactical team exploited the smallest inconsistencies in alien formations. Each motion, each decision, was an echo of humanity's relentless will to survive. Amid the chaos, Elias caught a glimpse of something unexpected, a flicker in the void, subtle and almost imperceptible. A human-sized shadow drifted alongside the ship. He blinked. Lieutenant, he whispered. Did you see that? Mara scanned the sensors. I don't know. Could be a debris field, sir. No, Elias said, a strange certainty in his chest. It's something else, something intentional. The Resolute pivoted, following the shadow just beyond the edge of the sensor range. It moved with grace, not aggression, almost like it was guiding them, a silent hand in the dark. Elias felt that subtle presence again, the same feeling. He'd experienced countless times and moments when survival seemed impossible. Call it instinct, luck, or divine subtlety. He didn't care. It was a gift, and he would honor it. Steady, he murmured, eyes narrowing. Follow it. Let it lead us. The alien armada reacted violently. Dozens of pulses arced toward the Resolute, each one a test, each one meant to destroy. And yet, the ship endured. Crew members moved as extensions of the vessel, their hearts synchronized in a single rhythm of defiance. In the midst of this chaos, Elias's mind wandered briefly. He remembered the words of his father, long dead, spoken once in a quiet childhood moment. Courage isn't about winning. Courage is about refusing to be defeated, even when everything says you should be. And here it was. The pulse of alien fire, The screams of shattered hull, the trembling of the ship, all of it was nothing compared to the human will, small yet unbroken, glowing like a candle against a hurricane. "Captain," Mara said, voice trembling despite herself. "We're holding. Against all odds. We're holding." Elias allowed himself a brief nod. "Yes. But holding is not enough. We will not merely survive. We will make them understand the price of underestimating humans." Another pulse struck the Resolute closer this time. Sparks flew across the bridge. Systems screamed under the strain, and yet, in the midst of near annihilation, the crew remained unbroken. "Prepare the countermeasures," Elias ordered. "Let's show them that one human mind can outthink hundreds of their machines. We will exploit the flaws they never noticed, the assumptions they never questioned." The shadow in the void drifted closer. Sensors confirmed it was not debris, not alien, not machine, something human-sized, something guiding them through the storm. Elias clenched his jaw. "Whatever this is," he said quietly, "it is not luck. It is something else. Someone or something watching over us." The alien fleet unleashed a full salvo in response, brilliant streaks of violet energy slicing through the expanse. The Resolute shivered violently, hull plating sparking, alarms shrieking, and then, with impossible coordination, the crew countered. Thrusters flared, shields absorbed, deflected, redistributed. Every human action became a brushstroke in a grand canvas of survival. For a moment, time slowed. The alien pulses, the ship's engines, the crew's collective heartbeat, they synchronized into a single, terrifying rhythm. And in that instant, Elias understood something fundamental. The battle was not just physical. It was the assertion of humanity itself, stubborn, relentless, unyielding. The void pulsed again, almost like it responded to their courage. A subtle warmth passed through Elias's chest, as though the universe itself acknowledged their defiance. "Prepare for maneuver Delta 7, he ordered. "This is our opening. Follow my lead and trust your instincts. Trust the will to survive." The Resolute twisted and dove into the midst of the alien formation, not like prey, but like a predator striking at the one place the others could not predict. Sensors flared, energy arcs scattered, and in that brief, heart-stopping moment the impossible became real. Elias knew the fight had only just begun. The first pulse had been survived, but the price of defiance was only beginning to be tallied. And somewhere far beyond the reach of human sight, a subtle presence lingered, as if the universe itself leaned closer to watch. The Resolute dove into the heart of the alien armada like a single defiant arrow piercing a storm. Stars streaked across the viewport as if the ship itself were tearing through time. The crew moved as one, engineers, pilots, tacticians, all attuned to the heartbeat of the vessel and the pulse of the universe around them. Fear had been replaced by pure focus. Terror had been replaced by strategy. The humans were no longer prey. They were an anomaly that refused to die. "Shields down to 45% on port side," Mara Jin reported, voice tight but steady. "We're absorbing more than expected." Elias clenched the edge of the bridge console, scanning the alien formation. Each dreadnought loomed like a mountain of darkness, and yet, within the predictability of their patterns, he saw openings, flaws, assumptions the armada had never tested. Portside evasive vector 324. "Engage," he barked. Engines flared. The Resolute twisted violently, dodging streams of violet energy that would have obliterated any unprepared vessel. Sparks arced across the bridge, alarms screaming in high-pitched bursts. Crew members clung to anything solid, faces pale but unbroken. The aliens reacted almost instantly, coordinating with unnerving precision. But Elias had counted on that. He had studied their behavior, mapped their firing arcs, and predicted their responses. For every pulse they unleashed, he had a counter, an action born not of superior firepower, but of human intuition and adaptability. A strange silence fell for the briefest moment amid the chaos, as if space itself held its breath. Then came the first sign that the Resolute's greatest weapon was not her guns or shields. It was her crew. "Deploying auxiliary drones," Elias ordered. "Now." From concealed bays, small, nimble drones surged into the void, weaving through the alien formation with impossible agility. Each one emitted decoy signals, minor gravitational disturbances, false energy signatures. The armada flinched, firing at shadows that did not exist. Mara's eyes widened. "They're reacting to ghosts. Good," Elias muttered. "Let them chase illusions while we strike where they least expect." In the midst of the chaos, the bridge crew executed maneuvers no algorithm could anticipate. Pilots looped through impossible arcs. Engineers rerouted energy through circuits never designed for the strain, and every small adjustment multiplied across the ship, magnifying into a symphony of human ingenuity. And yet, amid triumph and precision, the emotional toll pressed against them. Exhaustion and fear were constant companions. Crew members flinched at every pulse, hearts hammering in unison with the ship's trembling frame. For a brief moment, Elias allowed himself to glance at each of them, reading their expressions, silently offering reassurance with nothing more than a nod. "Remember," he said quietly, almost to himself, "courage isn't the absence of fear. It's moving forward anyway." A volley of alien fire struck near the engineering bay. The lights flickered and the floor shuddered violently. Engineers scrambled, rerouting power, soldering circuits with precision born of desperation. One young technician, barely 20, looked up at Elias with wide, terrified eyes. I can't," he stammered. Elias placed a hand on his shoulder. "Yes, you can, you must. Humans survive by doing what they think they cannot. That's who we are. That's why we endure." The boy nodded, swallowing terror, and returned to his station. Sparks flew, panels hummed under stress, and for a heartbeat the crew worked in perfect, almost unnatural harmony. Meanwhile, the alien armada began closing ranks, sensing resistance where none should exist. Entire ships coordinated like a single organism, attempting to isolate the Resolute and crush her. Energy pulses intensified, a violet storm that seared the void. And then, as if the universe itself intervened, a subtle anomaly appeared. A faint distortion, almost invisible, shimmered near the ship. A shadow that moved not with the armada, but alongside the Resolute. Sensors confirmed it was not debris, not alien, something human-shaped, something guiding them. Elias froze, eyes narrowing. "It's not a coincidence," he whispered. "We are not alone," Mara scanned frantically. "I don't understand, sir. Could it be divine?" Elias finished for her, his voice quiet but certain. Perhaps someone or something is watching over us. Someone or something that understands the value of courage." The crew didn't question it. Humans didn't need to see a miracle to act upon it. Faith, subtle or otherwise, fueled their ingenuity. The Resolute twisted sharply, following the subtle guide through a narrow corridor in the alien formation. The enemy ships, massive and confident, were forced to scatter, firing blindly at the shadows that danced around them. The human crew exploited every hesitation, every misfire. Every pulse of alien fire that missed was a small victory. Every minor survival was a testament to the stubbornness that had defined humanity for millennia. Elias's mind was a whirlwind of calculations and possibilities. They were not winning. They were not yet victorious. But for the first time, the armada hesitated. For the first time, the inevitability of destruction faltered against human unpredictability. He allowed himself a rare smile. "We're threading a needle," he murmured. "One wrong move, and we die. But if we succeed, we show them what humans are capable of." The bridge crew held their positions, muscles tight, nerves stretched to breaking, yet every mind sharp and alive. In the chaos, they were more than a crew. They were a weapon forged from determination, faith, and courage. The Resolute was not just a ship. She was a human statement in the void, unyielding against annihilation. And somewhere, beyond the comprehension of either humans or aliens, the quiet hand of the universe, call it God, fate, or the subtle order of creation, moved through the shadows. It whispered in the movements of the ship, the precision of the crew, the fleeting distortions in space that guided them through impossible odds. Elias clenched his jaw and spoke softly to himself, more prayer than command. "Not luck. Someone wants us to survive. Someone wants us to fight. Someone wants humans to endure." The alien fleet, sensing resistance, unleashed their first coordinated attack of magnitude, the null pulse. Entire swaths of the formation fired in synchrony, a wave of violet death designed to annihilate anything in its path. The Resolute shuddered violently. Hull plating groaned, alarm screamed. Crew members were thrown against consoles, straps tearing across shoulders and wrists. Sparks rained across the bridge as systems overloaded. "Brace for impact," Mara shouted, voice nearly lost amid the chaos. And then, in the midst of destruction, the hidden ingenuity of the Terrans revealed itself. Auxiliary shields, rerouted power, drone decoys, and subtle evasive maneuvers combined into a miracle of human engineering. The null pulse struck the ship but did not destroy it. Instead, it fractured around them, redirected by sheer precision, human instinct, and perhaps something unseen guiding their path. Elias felt the ship shiver beneath him, almost as if it were alive and proud. He turned to his crew, eyes blazing with the intensity of a man who had glimpsed eternity in a heartbeat of violence. "We survived," he said simply, "not because of luck, not because of weapons, because we are human, because we refuse to yield." The bridge was a scene of controlled chaos, yet there was triumph in the midst of terror. Humans had endured the first wave. They had survived the first test. And in doing so, they had demonstrated something the Armada had never anticipated. Defiance was a weapon the universe could not calculate. Elias turned back to the viewport. The alien fleet was massive, terrifying, and relentless, but cracks had begun to form. The first sign of human ingenuity, human courage, human will, had already taken root, and somewhere beyond the reach of understanding, the subtle presence lingered, almost like approval, almost like a guiding hand in the void. The null tide pressed around the Resolute like a living wall. Thousands of alien dreadnoughts surrounded the lone Terran battleship, their angular hulls gleaming like shards of obsidian under distant starlight. Each pulse of their weapons struck the void with lethal precision, yet the humans aboard the Resolute moved with a rhythm that no alien algorithm could anticipate. Captain Elias Thorn stood at the viewport, jaw tight, eyes scanning every flicker of movement. The bridge vibrated under the pressure of concentrated energy beams and near-miss explosions. Every system groaned in response, and yet against all odds, the ship endured. "Damage report," Elias commanded, voice cutting through the chaos like a blade. Lieutenant Mara Jin's voice was steady, betraying only a hint of the exhaustion gnawing at her, shields holding at 28%. Hull integrity compromised at multiple points along the port side. Engines stable, but auxiliary thrusters are nearing overload. Elias allowed himself a slow breath. Good, not enough to win, but enough to survive. For now. He turned sharply, eyes scanning his crew, each one braced against their stations, faces pale but resolute. Fear had not left them. It never did. But they had learned to harness it, to convert panic into focus, despair into calculation. This was the secret weapon the aliens could never comprehend. The relentless adaptability of the human spirit. "Prepare the countermeasures," Elias ordered. "Drones, decoys, reroute all non-essential power to shields and engines. And mark every possible weak point in their formation. We're about to show them something they never anticipated." A subtle hum rose through the hull, almost imperceptible but resonant. It came from deep within the ship, where the ancient systems, long thought obsolete, waited for a command they had not been given in decades. Elias's plan was risky, nearly suicidal, and yet it was the only chance. "Captain," Mara said, eyes wide, "are you certain about this?" Elias met her gaze steadily. "I am certain of one thing. Humans do not survive by following the rules. We survive by bending them, breaking them, rewriting them. The ship is old, the tech outdated, but the crew is brilliant, and sometimes brilliance is enough to tip the balance." He pressed a sequence into the main console, activating a cascade of systems long dormant. The hum grew louder, almost singing, resonating through every deck, every corridor. Engineers scrambled to monitor the reactions, working frantically as ancient circuits flared back to life. From the shadows of the ship, small figures moved, technicians, engineers, and specialists, each executing tasks that demanded improvisation and instinct. They were not just operating the ship, they were becoming the ship. Outside, the Armada sensed the shift. Sensors picked up fluctuations in energy, minor at first, then growing. The dreadnoughts adjusted, firing with increased intensity, but the Resolute danced through the storm with an almost unnatural precision. Elias allowed a faint smile. "Good, let them strain themselves. Let them believe they understand the battle." A sudden alarm cut through the bridge. An alien vessel had broken formation and targeted the Resolute directly. The crew flinched at the sheer scale of the threat. This ship alone could have obliterated a human colony. Yet as it fired, the humans responded not with panic but with ingenuity. "Deploy drones," Elias shouted. "Flank it, draw its fire." The small autonomous unit surged into the void, weaving through the alien ship's sensors and shields, creating false readings, mimicking the signatures of multiple ships. The dreadnought fired blindly, energy pulses slicing through empty space while the Resolute slipped through the cracks with uncanny precision. "Portside reinforced," Mara reported. "Hull strain stabilizing." "For now?" Elias nodded. "Good, now comes the part they won't expect." He activated a long-hidden subsystem, a relic of Terran engineering that had been considered obsolete for decades. It was crude by modern standards, but it had one advantage the Armada could never calculate: human unpredictability. "Engage stealth vector," he ordered. The ship shuddered as energy fields warped around it, bending light and gravity to render the Resolute nearly invisible. The Armada's sensors faltered. Dreadnoughts fired at illusions, at shadows, at nothing. For the first time, Elias allowed himself to feel a glimmer of hope. Not victory, not yet, but hope. The humans were not just surviving, they were contesting. Amid the chaos, he felt the subtle presence again, the quiet, impossible awareness that had followed them since the first pulse. It was like a shadow brushing the edge of consciousness, a whisper of something larger than the void itself. Elias did not question it. He did not name it. He simply acknowledged it. "Not luck," he murmured. "Not chance. Someone, something, wants us to survive, to fight, to endure." The alien fleet adjusted, sensing the evasions, but it was too late. The Resolute twisted through their formation with impossible agility, every movement orchestrated by the combined ingenuity of human minds and hands. Energy pulses were dodged, decoys distracted, and minor openings exploited. And then came the moment Elias had been waiting for. The breach point. A gap in the formation, narrow but present, not wide enough for a fleet, not wide enough for a standard dreadnought, but perfect for a single ship with the courage, skill, and intuition to exploit it. "Prepare for passage," he ordered. "All hands, this is it. Every ounce of human will, every spark of ingenuity. Now is the time to strike." The Resolute twisted into the breach, engines flaring, shields pulsing, crew moving in perfect synchronicity. The Armada reacted, but the humans were already beyond their immediate grasp. Energy pulses streaked past, slicing the void where the ship had been moments before, missing by meters. As the breach closed behind them, a strange stillness fell over the ship. Not calm, not relief, but a momentary pause that allowed every human aboard to breathe in unison. "Captain," Mara whispered, eyes scanning the void. We made it," Elias allowed himself a nod, heart pounding. "Not safe, not victory, but alive, for now. That is enough to begin the next step." The subtle presence lingered, almost tangible, a reminder that the universe watched and perhaps quietly guided. And in the shadows of the void, among the shattered waves of the alien formation, the first glimmer of human ingenuity, the true weapon, was ready to reveal itself. Elias exhaled, a long, steady breath. "The next move," he said, voice low, "is ours, and they will not anticipate it. For in the heart of the null tide, amidst death and impossibility, the humans aboard the Resolute were becoming more than survivors. They were architects of defiance, harbingers of ingenuity, and the first whisper of an unstoppable force that no alien fleet could calculate. The void pulsed around them, alive with the tension of inevitability and the audacity of hope. And somewhere, beyond comprehension, a quiet hand moved through the chaos as if the universe itself paused to watch. The void of the Orion Expanse seemed endless, yet Captain Elias Thorn felt its edges pressing close. Every pulse from the null tide reminded him of the fragile boundary between survival and annihilation. The alien Armada's numbers were overwhelming, their power unmatched. Yet something fundamental had shifted. They were no longer dealing with a predictable opponent. "Captain," Lieutenant Marajan reported, voice tight with urgency, "they're adjusting their formation. Sensors indicate they've recognized the breach, and they're closing it rapidly. If we don't act, we'll be trapped again in less than 60 seconds. Elias's gaze swept the endless black, scanning every flicker, every motion of the alien vessels. Their sheer precision made him wary, but within that precision lay patterns, a rigidity the humans could exploit. A plan had been forming in his mind for hours, tested against simulations, intuition, and the raw ingenuity of his crew. It was audacious, reckless, potentially suicidal. But audacity was the Terran hallmark, and desperation sharpened the mind. "Activate the secondary systems," Elias ordered, voice calm but commanding. "All auxiliary thrusters online. Divert maximum power to navigation and shields. Prepare the drone swarms for autonomous maneuver Delta." The crew responded instantly, moving with the fluidity born of discipline and fear combined. Engineers rerouted power to stabilize the aging ship. Pilots adjusted trajectories. The tactical team synchronized every motion with a precision that belied their exhaustion. The ship's hum shifted subtly, as if the ancient vessel itself understood the plan, aligning its systems to human will. Outside, the null tide moved like a single organism, responding to every change with terrifying speed. Yet the Resolute was no longer merely a ship. It was a manifestation of human ingenuity, a weapon in which every mind, hand, and heartbeat contributed to a singular purpose. Elias glanced at Mara. "Do you see it?" She followed his gaze. "The anomaly?" "Yes," he smiled faintly. "Not a glitch. Not debris. Something guiding us. Something. Watching." The subtle presence had returned, almost palpable now. A sense that the universe itself had paused to observe this single ship, this defiance, this spark of humanity. Elias did not name it. He did not question it. He simply acknowledged it as one might acknowledge a familiar rhythm in a song, a quiet hand steering them through impossible odds. "Drones deployed," Mara reported. "They're engaging autonomously, targeting minor vulnerabilities in the formation. It's working, they're distracted." Elias allowed a faint nod. "Good. Now comes the crucial part. Our edge isn't firepower, it's unpredictability. It's creativity. It's the refusal to accept the inevitable." The Resolute surged forward, weaving through the armada with uncanny grace. Energy pulses streaked past, narrowly missing the hull while the drone swarms created chaos, forcing the aliens to fire at shadows and illusions. In every corridor, engineers monitored systems, recalibrated shields, and improvised repairs mid-battle. Pilots executed maneuvers that would have been suicidal for any ordinary human. But these were not ordinary humans. Elias thought of the history of his species, centuries of survival against predators, hostile planets, and each other. Humans had always thrived in adversity, turning weakness into advantage, improvisation into art. The Armada may have crushed worlds effortlessly, but they had never faced the ingenuity of Terran minds working in perfect, desperate synchrony. "Captain," Mara said, voice tight, "they're beginning a coordinated strike on our aft section. They've identified the drones as decoys. Full fire incoming." Elias's eyes flicked to the tactical display. "Then we accelerate the next phase. Divert everything to the aft shields, release the decoy cores, and prepare for singularity engagement." A murmur of unease rippled through the crew. Singularity engagement, the ship's most radical, untested system, was risky beyond comprehension. Activation could destabilize the Resolute itself, but it also had the potential to cripple or even annihilate a section of the alien fleet. The decision rested entirely on human judgment, not technology. "Is everyone ready?" Elias asked, eyes sweeping the bridge. Nods came from every station. Engineers were steady. Pilots were taut with focus. Mara's gaze met his with unwavering resolve. "Do it," he commanded. Deep within the ship, the hum of ancient machinery grew louder, vibrating through bulkheads, through decks, through every living soul aboard. Energy coalesced, warped, and folded into a tiny singularity contained within the core of the Resolute. It was unstable, dangerous, beautiful, a testament to human ingenuity and audacity. Elias felt the subtle presence again, a whisper at the edge of perception, almost like approval, almost like guidance. It had led them here through the impossible. Now everything depended on human will and precision. "Singularity core active," Mara reported. "Stabilization holding?" "Just barely," Elias exhaled slowly. "Steady. Now release the decoy swarm along Vector 742. Use the pulse diversion to guide the core toward the central dreadnought cluster. Let's show them what humans can do when cornered." Outside, the void became a chaotic ballet of light and shadow. Alien dreadnoughts fired blindly at illusions, energy pulses collided, and the Resolute twisted through the chaos with near impossible precision. The singularity core pulsed, a tiny heartbeat of annihilation contained within human hands. "Vector aligned," Mara said, voice taut with excitement and fear. "Core ready for deployment." Elias's pulse quickened. He knew the odds. If even a single miscalculation occurred, the core could destabilize, destroying the Resolute instead of the enemy fleet. Yet he also knew that humans thrived in impossible odds. It was in their blood, their history, their will. "Release," he commanded. The core surged forward, a ripple of contained energy twisting through the void. It struck the heart of the alien formation, and for the first time the null tide faltered. Massive dreadnoughts erupted in violet firestorms, energy beams collided catastrophically, and sections of the armada scattered in chaos. The bridge erupted in controlled exhilaration. Crew members cheered, hands clenched, eyes shining with awe. Yet amidst the triumph, Elias remained focused. Survival had been achieved, but the battle was not yet over. The armada would regroup, would adapt, and the next engagement could be even more deadly. Still, for the first time, the humans aboard the Resolute had demonstrated that numbers, technology, and brute force were not the ultimate determinants of victory. Ingenuity, courage, and relentless will could turn the tide, even against an empire that crushed worlds effortlessly. Elias allowed a brief glance at Mara. They think they're unstoppable, but they've never faced humans who refuse to yield, who create solutions where none exist, who endure when every algorithm predicts failure. Mara's eyes glimmered. "We've made them hesitate." "For the first time?" "Yes," Elias said, voice low and certain, "and that hesitation is our opening." The void pulsed around them, alive with the tension of uncertainty, the electricity of survival, and the subtle, quiet presence of something greater than comprehension. An unseen hand guiding, whispering, allowing humans to persist against impossible odds. The Resolute, battered yet unbroken, twisted gracefully through the aftermath of the singularity strike. Alien vessels burned, scattered, and reformed around them. Yet the human crew was ready. Every nerve, every muscle, every thought honed to a single purpose: survival through ingenuity, courage, and faith. Elias exhaled, a slow, steady release of the tension coiled inside him. "This is just the beginning," he whispered. "The battle is far from over, but for the first time, we have the edge." And somewhere in the dark expanse beyond comprehension, the universe seemed to lean closer, as if acknowledging the defiance, creativity, and unyielding spirit of humanity. The void of the Orion Expanse shimmered with the aftermath of the singularity strike. Alien dreadnoughts drifted in fragments of violet fire, and the once perfect null tide now bore cracks, small, jagged but significant. Captain Elias Thorn stood at the viewport, jaw tight, eyes scanning the scattered armada. He could feel it in his bones. The tide had shifted, even if only slightly. "Damage report," he commanded, voice steady despite the adrenaline thrumming through him. Lieutenant Mara Jin's fingers danced across the console, eyes darting between displays. "Shields are holding at 22%. Hull integrity stabilized after core feedback. Systems are strained but functional. The drone sustained minimal losses. The singularity strike disrupted roughly 30% of the Armada's central cluster." Elias allowed himself a measured nod. 30%. Not enough to claim victory, but enough to prove a crucial point. Humans could defy even the most overwhelming odds. And this was only the beginning. He turned to the bridge crew, reading their faces. Exhaustion, tension, but also a gleam of exhilaration. "They've underestimated us," he said quietly. "And we intend to remind them why humans endure." Sensors picked up movement. Not disorganized, not panicked, but deliberate. The remaining dreadnoughts were reorganizing, attempting to isolate the Resolute. The Armada's numbers were vast, but the humans now had leverage. Chaos, carefully manipulated, could be a weapon. "Prepare drone swarms for autonomous sweeps," Elias ordered. "Target their flanks, draw them out. Every movement we make now should force them to reveal weakness." The crew moved with almost instinctive precision. Engineers rerouted auxiliary power to stabilize the aging ship. Pilots executed death-defying arcs through the debris-littered void, exploiting the smallest gaps in alien formations. Tactical officers coordinated drone swarms with surgical precision. Every human aboard the Resolute was no longer reacting. They were orchestrating, turning chaos into opportunity. Elias felt the subtle presence again, the quiet awareness that had guided them since the first pulse of null tide fire. It was not luck, not chance. It was something else, something vast and quiet, lending humans the edge of survival. He did not name it. He did not question it. He simply allowed himself to acknowledge its presence. "Captain," Mara said, voice tense, "we're detecting anomalies in their formation. Some dreadnoughts are hesitating, recalibrating. They're unsure. Your strike?" It shocked them, Elias smiled faintly. "Good. Confusion is the first crack in perfection. Exploit it now." He tapped into the old tactical boards, long considered obsolete by modern fleets. Coordinates, gravitational projections, energy dispersions, all flowed into a pattern only a human mind could conceive. The Resolute would become both bait and predator, a single ship moving unpredictably through the void, turning each threat into an opportunity. "Engage evasive vector Sigma," Elias ordered. "Drones lead. Pilots follow. Engineers support. Let's thread the needle again." The ship twisted violently, engines screaming, shields pulsing in synchronized rhythm. Alien energy pulses streaked past, some striking the decoys, others missing entirely. The Resolute's subtle warping of energy fields made it a nearly impossible target. Every missed shot was a victory, every survival a declaration. And then, amidst the chaos, a moment of quiet, the eye of a storm. Elias allowed himself to glance at the bridge crew. Exhaustion etched into their faces, yet determination burned brighter than any energy pulse in the void. "Humans endure," he whispered, almost prayer-like. "We survive because we create, because we adapt, because we refuse to yield." The drones completed their sweep, isolating clusters of enemy ships. Explosions lit the void as energy collisions erupted in controlled chaos. And now the Resolute's final maneuver began, one that relied not on the ship, nor the drones, nor even the Singularity Core. It relied on something far more potent: human ingenuity, courage, and relentless will. "Prepare for the assault vector," Elias said, voice low and resolute. "This is it. Every calculation, every improvisation, every ounce of human defiance comes together now. We strike where they least expect, and we force them to understand that one human mind can defy 1,000 machines." The armada tightened their formation, sensing the threat, unaware that the humans aboard the Resolute were no longer reacting, they were orchestrating. Every motion became a signal, every twist and turn a message: we will not yield. We endure. We fight. Elias allowed himself a brief reflective thought. The subtle presence had never left. It whispered in the timing of maneuvers, in the precise rhythm of energy flows, in the almost miraculous survival of systems under extreme stress. Humans were small, fragile creatures in an indifferent universe, but they carried something vast inside them, the spark of creativity, courage, and faith. "Delta Vector engaged," Mara reported, targeting the isolated cluster. "Weapons calibrated. Drones in position. Core ready for final input." Elias's pulse quickened. The plan was audacious: to turn the alien fleet's strength against itself using confusion, human ingenuity, and the limited resources of a single ship to amplify their effect. It was a maneuver no algorithm could calculate, no alien could anticipate. He pressed the final sequence. The Resolute surged forward, weaving through the void with grace and precision. Energy pulses streaked past like deadly ribbons, but the humans moved as one. Drones flitted through the gaps, creating illusions of fleets where there were none. And the Singularity Core, now fully stabilized, pulsed at the heart of the maneuver, ready to amplify the chaos. Elias's heart pounded. Sweat trickled down his temple. This was it, the defining moment. One misstep, one miscalculation, and the null tide would crush them. Yet in that same moment he felt certainty. Humans survived impossible odds not because they were invincible, but because they refused to surrender. "Now," he whispered, "execute." The void erupted. Energy collided, dreadnoughts shattered, and the small cluster of human-directed chaos spread outward like a virus in the enemy formation. Ships veered off course, collided, misfired, and faltered. The first cracks in the null tide widened, growing into gaps that the Resolute could exploit. On the bridge, crew members cheered quietly, fists clenched, eyes shining with awe and disbelief. They had done the impossible. They had turned the tide, even if only slightly. Elias allowed himself a rare, fleeting smile. "We are human," he said softly. "And humans endure." The subtle presence lingered again, almost tangible. A quiet affirmation that the universe had witnessed defiance, courage, and ingenuity, and had allowed the humans to persist, but the battle was far from over. The null tide had been shocked, yes, but it had not yet been defeated. The aliens would adapt, reorganize, and strike back with the full weight of their fleet. Survival would demand more creativity, more courage, more human will than ever before. Elias's gaze swept the viewport. The fractured armada stretched across the expanse, threatening, relentless but no longer invincible. The humans aboard the Resolute had found the edge of defiance, and that edge was deadly. The void was alive with violence. Streaks of violet fire lanced through the darkness. Fragments of alien dreadnoughts drifted like burning meteors. And yet amidst the chaos, the Terran battleship Resolute moved with a terrifying precision. Captain Elias Thorn knew one thing with absolute clarity. The next moves would decide not just survival, but the fate of countless worlds, Captain, Lieutenant Marajin reported, fingers flying over the tactical display. The armada is attempting to regroup. They're forming a pincer maneuver around us, closing from the northeast and southeast vectors. If we don't act, we'll be trapped in a tightening vortex. Elias's jaw tightened. Good. Let them think they've anticipated us. Let them believe the trap is theirs. He pivoted toward the bridge crew. The plan is simple, though execution will be deadly. We lure them into a collapse, using their own rigidity against them. Drones, decoy signals, and precise maneuvers, we turn their strength into their weakness. And the Singularity Core will be the final stroke. Engineers and pilots exchanged tense glances. The maneuvers were suicidal, yet their faith in human ingenuity, born from countless hours of improvisation, courage, and sheer survival instinct, was unshakable. Activate the decoy swarms, Elias commanded. We need them focused on ghosts, on illusions. Let's make them overextend. We move next. The drones surged forward like a swarm of spectral predators, weaving intricate patterns through the alien fleet. Energy signatures multiplied, creating the illusion of dozens of Terran ships. The null tide fired blindly, slicing through empty void, miscalculating, and leaving gaps just wide enough for the Resolute to exploit. Engineering, Elias said, voice low but commanding. Stabilize the Singularity Core. We cannot afford failure now. Every system must endure. The engineers worked frantically, monitors flickering, circuits humming under extreme stress. Sweat-streaked faces, hands trembling, yet their precision was unerring. Every adjustment, every calculation, every improvisation kept the ancient system alive. Mara's voice cut through the tension. Captain, vectors aligned. Core stabilization holding. Drone clusters are drawing them in perfectly. It's working. Elias allowed himself a moment of grim satisfaction. Good. Humans survive on calculation and courage, but sometimes we must trust something unseen, guiding us when logic alone is insufficient. The subtle presence had returned, almost tangible now, a quiet awareness threading through the chaos of the void. Elias did not name it. He did not question it. He simply felt it, like the rhythm of a heartbeat in a universe indifferent to life yet subtly moved by it. Prepare for the collapse maneuver, he ordered. Drones lead, we follow. Singularity Core ready for deployment at the apex. The Resolute twisted violently, engines screaming, shields pulsing. The null tide converged, drawn by the Phantom fleet, unaware that the true threat was not the decoys but the one ship threading the impossible path. Hold steady, Elias murmured. Focus on the gaps, predict their overcorrections, and let human ingenuity guide the strike. The alien dreadnoughts, immense and confident, fired at shadows, their formation faltering as gaps widened. The Resolute maneuvered through these fractures, her movements impossible to predict, her crew executing with flawless synchronicity. Every pulse, every twist, every minor adjustment was a testament to human defiance and creativity. Core ready, Mara reported, voice tight with anticipation. Apex engagement in 3, 2, 1. The Singularity Core pulsed, a contained heartbeat of annihilation, guided not just by systems but by the minds and instincts of humans who refused to be crushed. It surged forward, a distortion of gravity and energy threading through the fractured fleet. Outside, the void erupted in chaos. Alien dreadnoughts collided, Energy streams collided, and the null tide fractured under the weight of its own rigidity. Sections of the fleet were annihilated in cascading explosions, leaving only shards of the once invincible armada. The bridge erupted in a mixture of exhilaration and disbelief. Crew members cheered quietly, faces pale with exhaustion yet shining with awe. They had done the impossible. They had turned the overwhelming might of the null tide against itself. Elias allowed himself a rare, slow smile. This is why humans endure, he said softly. Ingenuity, courage, defiance, and the quiet hand guiding us when logic fails. That is our weapon. Mara turned toward him, eyes wide. Captain, we've shattered them. Entire sections? Gone. The rest are retreating. Yes, Elias said, gaze sweeping the void. But retreat does not mean surrender. They will regroup. They will return. And we must be ready, always ready. Humans endure not because they are invincible, but because they refuse to yield. The subtle presence lingered, almost like a gentle acknowledgement that the universe had witnessed human defiance and had allowed it to flourish against impossible odds. Elias did not speak. He simply felt it, a quiet affirmation of the power of courage and creativity, of will unbroken and ingenuity unbound. Outside, the void settled into a tense calm. The shattered armada drifted, reeling, disoriented, yet the humans aboard the Resolute were unbroken. They had transformed chaos into strategy, fear into focus, and desperation into triumph. Elias turned to Mara. This is far from over, he said. But we've proven something vital. Even against the impossible, even when the universe seems indifferent, humans endure, humans defy, and humans triumph when others expect only failure. The bridge was silent for a heartbeat, save for the hum of systems and the subtle vibrations of a ship alive with human will. The universe itself seemed to lean closer, watching the culmination of ingenuity, courage, and faith in the human spirit. And as the null tide scattered into the expanse for the first time, Captain Elias Thorn allowed himself a thought that had been whispered in his mind for hours. One ship, one crew, and the edge of human defiance is a weapon no empire can anticipate. The Orion Expanse was no longer silent. It roared with the chaos of fractured dreadnoughts, their violet fire dimming in the wake of the Resolute's relentless defiance. The null tide, once an unstoppable force that had crushed entire star systems, now reeled, its perfect coordination shattered by the audacity of a single human ship. Captain Elias Thorn stood at the heart of the bridge, his silhouette framed against the viewport, eyes burning with a fire that matched the stars beyond. The battle was not over, but the humans had carved their mark into the void, and the universe itself seemed to bear witness. Captain, Lieutenant Mara Jin said, her voice a blend of exhaustion and resolve. Sensors show the armada regrouping. They're forming a defensive sphere, tighter, more cautious. They're adapting to us. Elias's jaw clenched, his mind racing through every possible outcome. The null tide was learning, but so were the humans. Every maneuver, every survival had been a lesson in exploiting the alien fleet's rigidity. The Resolute's crew had turned desperation into strategy, fear into focus, and now, with the armada on the defensive, the opportunity for a decisive strike lay within reach. Good, Elias said, voice low and steady. They're cautious now. That's their mistake. Caution breeds hesitation, and hesitation is where humans thrive. He turned to the bridge, his gaze sweeping across the crew, engineers hunched over flickering consoles, pilots gripping controls with white-knuckled precision, tactical officers coordinating drone swarms with an almost preternatural focus. Each face was etched with exhaustion, yet every pair of eyes burned with the same unyielding spark that had carried humanity through millennia of impossible odds. They were not just a crew, they were the embodiment of human defiance, a living testament to the refusal to surrender. Listen to me, Elias said, his voice rising just enough to cut through the hum of the ship. We've survived their pulses. We've broken their formations. We've made the impossible real. But this moment, this is where we don't just endure. This is where we triumph. We don't have their numbers or their weapons, but we have something they cannot calculate. Human ingenuity, human courage, and the will to rewrite the stars themselves. The crew straightened, their fatigue momentarily forgotten, their resolve reignited by his words. The Resolute's hull vibrated faintly, as if the ship itself echoed their determination, its ancient systems straining yet holding under the weight of human will. "Prepare the final maneuver," Elias commanded. "All systems to maximum. Drones, singularity core, shields, engines, everything we have. We're not just striking their fleet, we're striking their certainty. We're showing them that humanity does not kneel, even when the void itself demands it." Mara's fingers flew across the console, her voice sharp with focus. "Core stabilization at critical levels. Drones redeployed for maximum disruption. Vectors plotted for the heart of their sphere." "We're ready, sir." Elias nodded, his heart pounding with a rhythm that felt synchronized with the ship, the crew, and something deeper, something vast and quiet that had been with them since the first pulse of the null tide. That subtle presence, that whisper of guidance was stronger now, almost tangible, like a hand steadying the Resolute through the chaos. He didn't name it. He didn't need to. It was enough to know it was there, guiding them toward this moment. "Execute," he said, voice calm but resolute. The Resolute surged forward, engines roaring with a ferocity that belied the ship's age. The void became a maelstrom of light and shadow as drone swarms darted through the alien formation, sowing chaos with false signatures and gravitational distortions. The Armada's defensive sphere tightened, energy pulses lancing toward the Resolute, but the humans were ready. Pilots wove through the gaps with impossible precision. Engineers redirected power in ways no manual had ever anticipated, and the singularity core pulsed at the heart of the ship, a contained storm of annihilation waiting for its moment. "Core deployment in 10 seconds, Mara reported, her voice steady despite the chaos. Target locked on their command nexus, the central dreadnought. Elias's eyes narrowed, scanning the viewport. The command nexus loomed like a dark monolith, its surface pulsating with energy, coordinating the Armada's every move. Destroy it, and the null tide's cohesion would collapse entirely. Fail, and the Resolute would be obliterated in the counterstrike. "Steady," he whispered, more to himself than the crew. "This is humanity's moment, not just to survive, but to prove we belong among the stars." The subtle presence pulsed stronger now, a rhythm that seemed to synchronize with the ship's systems, the crew's movements, the very heartbeat of defiance. Elias felt it in his chest, a warmth, a certainty, as if the universe itself leaned closer, watching, waiting, willing the humans to succeed. 5 seconds, Mara said, her voice taut with anticipation. The Resolute twisted through a barrage of violet energy, shields flaring under the strain. Sparks rained across the bridge, alarms screamed, and the hull groaned as if protesting the impossible demands placed upon it. Yet the crew held firm, their hands steady, their minds sharp, their hearts unyielding. 3, 2, 1. The singularity core released, a pinpoint of annihilation streaking through the void. It struck the command nexus with catastrophic precision, and for a moment time itself seemed to pause, The dreadnought erupted in a blinding cascade of violet and white, its destruction rippling outward, destabilizing the surrounding fleet. Dreadnoughts collided, energy streams misfired, and the once impenetrable sphere fractured into chaos. The bridge erupted in a roar of triumph. Crew members shouted, fists raised, faces alight with disbelief and pride. The Resolute shuddered, battered but unbroken, its systems screaming under the strain, yet holding together through sheer human ingenuity. Elias stood motionless, his gaze fixed on the viewport as the remnants of the null tide scattered like embers in the wind. The command nexus was gone. The Armada's coordination was broken. For the first time in centuries, an unstoppable force had been stopped, not by superior technology, not by overwhelming numbers, but by the relentless, unpredictable will of a single human crew. "We did it," Mara whispered, her voice trembling with awe. We broke them." Elias turned to her, his expression a mixture of exhaustion and quiet triumph. "No, Mara, we didn't just break them. We showed them what humanity is. We showed them that no empire, no matter how vast, can stand against the ingenuity, courage, and defiance of those who refuse to yield. The subtle presence lingered, stronger now than ever, as if the universe itself acknowledged the moment. It was not a deity, not a force, not a tangible thing, but a quiet affirmation that humanity's spark, its relentless drive to endure, had been seen, felt, and perhaps even celebrated by the vastness of creation. The Resolute drifted through, the wreckage, its hull scarred, its systems faltering, yet its crew unbroken. Engineers scrambled to stabilize the ship. Pilots guided it through the debris, and tactical officers monitored the retreating armada, wary of a counterattack. But for now, the void was quiet, the stars shimmering with a clarity that felt almost reverent. Elias stepped forward, placing a hand on the console, feeling the faint vibrations of the ship beneath his fingers. "This isn't the end," he said softly, addressing the crew. "The null tide will return. Others may follow. But today, we've proven something eternal. Humans endure. We create, we defy, and when the universe tests us, we answer, not with surrender, but with a fire that burns brighter than the stars." The crew stood in silence, absorbing his words, their faces a mixture of pride, exhaustion, and unyielding resolve. They had faced annihilation and emerged not just as survivors, but as architects of a new truth. Humanity was a force that no empire could predict, no algorithm could calculate. Elias turned back to the viewport, his gaze tracing the distant stars. The subtle presence lingered, a quiet whisper that seemed to say, "You are seen. You are enough. You are human." The Resolute sailed onward, a lone spark in the infinite dark, carrying the weight of its victory and the promise of battles yet to come. The armada was broken, but the war was not over. Yet in this moment, Captain Elias Thorn knew one unshakable truth. Humanity's defiance was not just a weapon, it was a legacy, etched into the fabric of the cosmos, and somewhere beyond the reach of comprehension. The universe watched, its stars shimmering with something that felt almost like pride.